Camilla believed one royal title would always belong to her alone. Then King Charles quietly approved Catherine for exactly the same honor. And insiders say that single decision changed everything. Camilla froze. For several long seconds, she didn't say a word. The room fell silent as the royal secretary quietly placed a sealed red folder on the desk. Inside was a decision nobody in the palace believed would arrive so soon. Catherine was about to receive the kingdom's highest Scottish honor. It wasn't the title itself that sent a chill through the room. It was what the title meant. If the ceremony went ahead, Camilla would no longer stand alone at the summit of the royal hierarchy. The one symbol she believed set her apart would now be shared by the future queen. And according to palace tradition, once that process began, there was almost no turning back. So how did Camilla respond? She didn't storm out. She didn't raise her voice. Instead, she ordered an emergency strategy meeting behind closed doors, because everyone in that room understood the same thing. Stopping the ceremony would be almost impossible, but if they failed, the balance of influence inside the palace would never look the same again. The impending constitutional designation of Catherine, Princess of Wales, as an extra lady of the most ancient and most noble order of the Thistle, carries a weight that reverberates far beyond standard palace updates. For the reigning queen consort, Camilla, this administrative document does not represent a standard family congratulation or a routine declaration of dynastic merit. Instead, it functions as an existential threat, an institutional dismantling of her remaining executive leverage, and a highly public termination of her visual monopoly over the crown's most venerated Scottish heritage. For nearly 3 years, her placement as the solitary female anchor at the absolute summit of the sovereign hierarchy appeared entirely secure, validated by her own high-profile introduction to the Order of the Thistle in June 2023. However, as the historical calendar transitioned into June 2026, the defensive sanctuary she had carefully constructed within the palace infrastructure began to rapidly fracture. The impending investiture of Princess Catherine has forced a stark, deeply troubling dilemma into the minds of Camilla's closest strategists, a dilemma that now dominates every internal communication, backdoor memo, and defensive briefing echoing through the private corridors of Buckingham Palace. Why is it that Queen Camilla can never, under any structural circumstances, tolerate Catherine achieving the rank of extra lady of the most ancient and most noble order of the Thistle? What is it about this specific Scottish honor that converts a standard familial elevation into a bitter, high-stakes structural battle for survival between the active consort and the future queen? To adequately address this question, forensic constitutional analysts must peer past the surface-level glamour of royal pageantry and scrutinize the brutal, unforgiving mechanics of institutional scarcity that govern the British peerage. The Order of the Thistle is not a decorative token distributed at the casual whim of a ruling monarch. It is the absolute pinnacle, the most historically revered order of chivalry in Scotland, occupying an administrative position of supreme constitutional weight that is second only to the Order of the Garter in England. Established in its modern framework by King James VII in 1687, though deeply rooted in ancient medieval traditions, the order is defined by a fierce, uncompromising structural exclusivity. By sacred statutory decree, the number of ordinary members is restricted to a maximum of 16 knights and ladies. These 16 seats are reserved exclusively for individuals who have demonstrated the most monumental, lifelong dedication to the preservation of Scottish statehood, cultural history, and civic public infrastructure. This extreme structural scarcity ensures that every single vacancy within the order is observed with predatory vigilance by the civil service, the traditional aristocracy, and the royal family alike. Admission into this elite circle signifies that an individual is not merely a transient participant in public life, but a permanent, historic pillar of the state's foundational heritage. Crucially, the statutory framework of the order grants the sovereign the absolute, independent prerogative to appoint a distinct category of members known as royal knights and extra ladies. This specific designation, extra lady, exists entirely outside the statutory limit of the 16 ordinary members. It is a supreme constitutional mechanism engineered specifically to signal the absolute core of the legitimate bloodline, reserved for those whose very presence on the world stage embodies the enduring sovereignty of the crown. The Order of the Thistle is the ultimate visual and legal articulation of the British monarchy's territorial dominion over its northern realm. Every motif embedded within the order's regalia is saturated with the language of ancient state power. The central emblem is the thistle, the historical national flower of Scotland, a plant defined by its rugged, defensive beauty and its sharp, protective thorns. This imagery is paired with the order's ancient, uncompromising Latin motto, Nemo me impune lacessit. Translated into the cold realities of modern constitutional governance, these words carry a severe, historic warning. No one provokes me with impunity. To possess this system of heraldry is to carry the physical mandate of the state. It is a visual declaration that the bearer is a primary custodian of the United Kingdom's unified sovereignty, commanding a level of institutional reverence that transcends temporary political or marital alignments. For Queen Camilla, the prospect of Princess Catherine gaining access to this specific institutional fortress represents a catastrophic neutralization of her own administrative standing. Camilla's entire modern leverage within the royal family has been built upon the concept of visual and ceremonial uniqueness. When she was appointed as an extra lady of the Thistle in 2023, it was framed as the ultimate validation of her long, controversial journey toward legitimacy. It was her exclusive armor, a distinct symbolic territory that belonged to her alone within the current reign. But the transition into 2026 has brought a severe internal correction. The realization that King Charles III is now moving forward with the legal procedures to grant Catherine the exact same extraordinary status has exposed the fundamental vulnerability of Camilla's position. It has triggered a profound psychological and strategic crisis within her camp, exposing the deep-seated institutional anxieties of a queen consort who realizes that the sands of her influence are rapidly running out. The core of Camilla's narrow-mindedness regarding this appointment stems from a calculated understanding of what she stands to lose the exact moment Catherine is invested with the order's sacred green velvet. It is the sudden, irreversible shattering of her symbolic monopoly, an administrative confirmation that her decades-long struggle to secure an independent, unassailable fortress at the top of the Windsor hierarchy is facing a permanent, devastating checkmate from the legitimate bloodline. Here is part 2 of the rewritten text. Maintaining the exact content, structural substance, and precise length of your original narrative, while adjusting the stylistic phrasing by approximately 10% to ensure distinct textual originality. Part 2. The clash of royal philosophies and the king's endorsement. The underlying administrative conflict that erupted into the open during the first half of 2026 was not a sudden burst of familial discord, but rather the inevitable collision of two entirely different philosophies of royal power. According to highly sensitive leaks originating from senior civil servants within the Cabinet Office, the operational file concerning the appointment of Catherine, Princess of Wales, to the Order of the Thistle was pushed forward by King Charles III following an intense period of internal reflection. The king had spent the preceding 12 months observing the structural stability of his government during a period where his own public schedule was severely restricted due to intensive medical treatments. Throughout this unprecedented administrative vacuum, it was Catherine who emerged as the primary psychological anchor for the British populace. Her flawless execution of state duties, performed under the immense weight of personal health challenges and unrelenting international media scrutiny, provided the ultimate proof of her absolute alignment with the foundational mechanisms of the state. In May 2026, King Charles III formalized his profound respect for the Princess of Wales by distributing a highly strategic internal memorandum to the members of the Privy Council and the senior staff of the Royal Collection Trust. In this historic document, the sovereign utilized language that senior constitutional experts described as a definitive declaration of future succession security. The king explicitly praised Catherine as the perfect blueprint for the future of the monarchy, framing her current public profile as the essential anchor maintaining the public trust in the integrity of the crown. This was not a casual gesture of paternal affection, but a cold, calculated institutional endorsement designed to signal that the core architecture of the modern empire was being systematically aligned with the Princess of Wales and her husband, the Prince of Wales. The transition of Princess Catherine to the rank of Extra Lady of the Thistle represents an absolute administrative promotion, a logical escalation from her current standing within the British honours system. Catherine already possesses the highest honours that can be bestowed upon a female member of the royal family, including her status as a Dame Grand Cross of the Royal Victorian Order and her historic 2024 appointment as a member of the Order of the Companions of Honour. Her elevation to the Order of the Thistle, is the definitive recognition of her exceptional service as the Countess of Strathearn, a position that has seen her spend nearly 15 years cultivating an unbreakable, highly strategic relationship with the civic, military, and educational institutions of Scotland. Unlike the deep-seated controversies and negative public reception that have shadowed Queen Camilla for over 3 decades, Catherine commands an absolute majority of public adoration. Her public record is entirely clean, devoid of the backdoor administrative maneuvers and desperate asset extractions that have recently come to define the office of the Queen Consort, such as the fraudulent 99-year lease scandal involving Tom Parker Bowles in April 2026. By utilizing the supreme prestige of the Order of the Thistle, King Charles III is formally confirming that Catherine is the sole legitimate face of the future monarchy, preparing her to occupy the sovereign axis alongside Prince William when the crown inevitably transitions to the next generation. The proposed elevation of the Princess of Wales to the supreme rank of Extra Lady of the Order of the Thistle has ignited a fierce defensive counter-campaign within the private apartments of Queen Camilla. This intense administrative resistance is driven by a cold, calculated strategy to protect the fragile remnants of Camilla's sovereign influence following her devastating institutional defeat in late May 2026, when Prince William issued the sovereign decree of Duke exclusivity and permanently severed her family's unauthorized access to the lucrative portfolios of the Duchy of Cornwall. To understand the depth of Camilla's narrow-minded opposition to this appointment, one must examine the specific systemic losses she faces the exact moment Princess Catherine is invested with the sacred insignia of Scotland's highest chivalric order. Camilla's current standing within the royal hierarchy is heavily dependent on her status as the solitary female anchor at the apex of the contemporary court. She was appointed as an Extra Lady of the Order of the Thistle in June 2023, with her formal installation taking place in July 2024 at the Thistle Chapel within St. Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh. For the past 2 years, this specific Scottish honor has served as her ultimate symbolic armor, a distinct territorial domain that belonged exclusively to her within the current reign, separating her rank from the junior members of the family. The realization that King Charles III is now moving forward with the legal procedures to grant Catherine the exact same extraordinary status has shattered this ceremonial monopoly. If Catherine receives the Thistle in mid-2026, it means the future queen will possess an absolute equality of symbolic stature with her stepmother within the Northern Realm. The unique authority that Camilla worked for decades to secure as the supreme matriarch of the current dynasty will instantly dissolve, exposed as a temporary arrangement rather than a permanent fixture of state power. Furthermore, this appointment triggers a profound strategic crisis for Camilla due to an internal institutional anxiety known within the palace as the Dowager Queen Panic. Under the unyielding framework of British constitutional law, a queen consort's official status, funding, and administrative leverage are tied directly to the survival of the reigning monarch. The exact moment King Charles III concludes his reign, Camilla will instantly transition to the role of Dowager Queen. This position carries zero sovereign authority, no automatic seat on the Privy Council, and absolutely no independent access to the massive sovereign cash flows generated by the Duchy of Lancaster or the sovereign grant, having already lost the ability to extract permanent hard assets for her non-royal bloodline. Camilla understands that her high-ranking chivalric appointments are the final remaining weapons of political leverage in her arsenal. If Catherine is invested into the Order of the Thistle, Camilla's remaining influence in Scotland, a territory she has systematically used as a personal sanctuary to cultivate aristocratic alliances and secure public favor, will completely evaporate. Camilla is intensely aware of the brutal realities of royal optics, and she cannot tolerate the prospect of a younger, flawless, and immensely popular future queen sharing the unique visual grandeur of the Order's supreme ceremonial regalia. To allow Catherine to step into the sovereign axis of the Thistle is to admit that the current consort's symbolic relevance has reached its expiration date. Camilla views this appointment not as a routine family decoration, but as a definitive administrative execution of her standing, a formal confirmation issued by the Crown that her position is merely a transient interlude before the permanent, generational rise of the legitimate bloodline under the future dynasty of King William V and Queen Catherine. The strategic nomination of the Princess of Wales to the Order of the Thistle has catalyzed the formation of an unyielding institutional alliance among the senior members of the royal family who carry the legitimate bloodline. This powerful alignment has effectively created an airtight operational front against the office of the queen consort, leaving Camilla completely isolated within the decision-making chambers of the court. Rather than viewed as a standard familial debate, the inner circle of the dynasty has treated this appointment as a vital constitutional measure required to safeguard the long-term integrity of the throne. Prince William, the Prince of Wales, has maintained an absolute, uncompromised stance throughout this administrative standoff, utilizing his significantly expanded executive authority over the royal estates and his supreme standing as the head of the Duchy of Cornwall. The future monarch has deployed his full strategic weight to accelerate the appointment process. For Prince William, this elevation is not merely a public acknowledgement of his wife's exceptional service during a period of immense systemic strain, but a calculated, necessary consolidation of the core line of succession. By ensuring that Princess Catherine is granted the supreme chivalric honor of Scotland, William is consciously reinforcing the sovereign axis that will define the next era of the British monarchy, permanently anchoring their combined authority within the constitutional fabric of the United Kingdom. Standing shoulder to shoulder with the Prince of Wales is Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, who operates as the ultimate disciplinary force and the chief guardian of traditional boundaries within the royal household. Princess Anne's support for Catherine's nomination is absolute, rooted in her profound dedication to the historic rules of succession and her long-standing disdain for backdoor administrative manipulation. Having spent over 50 years maintaining the strict internal discipline of the monarchy, the Princess Royal possesses an unparalleled understanding of how symbolic honors dictate actual power dynamics behind palace walls. Her historic friction with Camilla, dating back to the complex social and romantic dynamics of the early decades of their lives, has provided an extra layer of structural vigilance against any defensive maneuvers emerging from the Queen Consort's office. Princess Anne recognized that Camilla's intense opposition to Catherine's elevation was entirely driven by personal insecurity and a desperate desire to maintain a monopoly over the supreme visual symbols of state power. During a highly restrictive meeting of the Senior Royal Council, Princess Anne forcefully dismantled the arguments presented by Camilla's private secretaries, stating clearly that the institution requires individuals who offer unconditional dedication to the crown, rather than individuals who operate out of fear for their own temporary status. This decisive intervention from the Princess Royal effectively neutralized Camilla's ability to mount a formal bureaucratic defense, confirming that the old guard of the palace and the central security apparatus had firmly aligned with the future king and queen. The convergence of Prince William's financial and executive control with Princess Anne's unmatched institutional authority has created a permanent correction of the internal royal landscape. By bringing Catherine into the elite circle of the Order of the Thistle, this bloodline alliance has established an irreversible precedent. The deliberate coordination between the Prince of Wales and the Princess Royal has sent a definitive message through every corridor of the civil service and the wider court, proving that the board of directors of this ancient institution has made an executive decision. The brief period where the Queen Consort could influence the distribution of sovereign assets and historical titles is officially over, and the legitimate heirs have successfully secured the gates of the empire against external extraction, leaving Queen Camilla structurally excommunicated from the future governance of the realm. The upcoming investiture of Catherine, Princess of Wales, into the Order of the Thistle represents a permanent institutional realignment that systematically erases the final layer of ceremonial distinction, separating the reigning consort from the future queen. When analyzing the structural evolution of the British peerage, the distribution of these high-ranking honors serves as a public declaration of current institutional favor and future inheritance rights. By initiating the legal procedures to grant Catherine this supreme Scottish title, King Charles III is executing a definitive administrative measure that completely levels the symbolic playing field between his wife and his daughter-in-law, effectively stripping Queen Camilla of her hard-won exclusive standing within the sovereign hierarchy. To fully grasp the magnitude of this shift, forensic constitutional experts point to the absolute visual and physical contrast in how these two women draw their institutional legitimacy. Camilla's entire modern elevation is fundamentally rooted in her marriage to the current monarch. It is a temporary, transient authority that possesses a clear, impending expiration date. The exact moment King Charles III ceases to be on the throne, her access to the physical and financial engine of the state evaporates, reducing her status to that of a dowager queen who is entirely dependent on the housing allowances and travel budgets allocated at the sole discretion of the next sovereign, King William V. Conversely, Princess Catherine's authority is forged through her alignment with the permanent, legitimate bloodline, backed by the unwavering support of the Prince of Wales and her definitive standing as the future queen of the realm. This appointment formally signals that the material and symbolic wealth of the empire belongs exclusively to the direct line of succession, transforming Camilla's status from a supreme royal matriarch into a temporary tenant within an empire controlled by the heirs of the woman she spent decades trying to eclipse. This erosion of Camilla's authority is most devastatingly manifested in the loss of her visual and ceremonial monopoly. In the highly sophisticated and ancient language of the British monarchy, who wears what serves as the ultimate forensic proof of who holds actual executive power behind the scenes. For decades, specific female icons within the House of Windsor have been defined by their exclusive relationship with unique historical assets. Just as Diana, Princess of Wales, was forever linked to the iconic lover's knot tiara, Queen Camilla had carved out her own distinct visual identity through her exclusive deployment of the Order of the Thistle's supreme regalia. Apart from her standard ceremonial garments, the dark green velvet robe and the historical insignia of the Thistle were the only grand symbolic assets that belonged entirely to her within the current reign, separating her rank from the junior members of the court. The moment Princess Catherine is invested with the exact same extraordinary status, this visual monopoly completely shatters. Catherine will have the full legal and heraldic right to cloak herself in the identical historic vestments during major state processional events, effectively shifting the global media focus and the attention of international diplomats entirely toward her own sovereign axis. Camilla is acutely aware that she cannot compete with the flawless public profile and immense popularity of a younger, highly revered future queen. By allowing Catherine to share this unique visual territory, the advisory boards managing the royal collections and the central court auditors are delivering an unmistakable message that reverberates through every corridor of Buckingham Palace. The brief era where the queen consort could use these physical symbols of state power to elevate her personal standing is officially dead. This strategic elevation of Catherine acts as a final administrative sentence, confirming the irreversible decline of Camilla's shadow administration and establishing a clear, unyielding precedent for the future governance of the dynasty. The final administrative confirmation of this historic shift will reach its grand climax when the official investiture ceremony takes place at the historic Thistle Chapel within St. Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh, Scotland. To the international press corps and the global public, the event will be presented with the traditional, breathtaking splendor that defines the ancient visual language of the British monarchy. However, for senior constitutional analysts and forensic behavioral experts monitoring the state feeds, Catherine's formal installation will stand as the ultimate legal and psychological victory of the legitimate bloodline, providing undeniable physical proof that the temporary shadow administration of Queen Camilla has been completely dismantled. When Princess Catherine steps into the sacred chambers of the chapel, the world will witness her dressed in the most majestic and historically significant vestments of the entire British honor system. She will be cloaked in the spectacular heavy robe of dark green velvet, a deep and powerful hue that serves as a permanent symbol of the rugged hills, ancient forests, and enduring spirit of Scotland. This supreme garment, meticulously crafted by the crown's master tailors, from the finest silk velvet and lined with brilliant white silk taffeta, is designed to sweep majestically across the stone floor, projecting an image of absolute territorial dominion. Atop her head, she will wear the traditional black velvet bonnet, a structured, historical piece of headwear adorned with a brilliant, pure white ostrich feather plume that sways elegantly with her every movement, symbolizing the supreme grace, purity of service, and elevated sovereign rank of the future queen. The absolute focal point of this ceremonial armor will be the magnificent star of the Order of the Thistle, pinned with precise protocol onto the left breast of her velvet robe. This priceless masterpiece of historical silversmithing is formed by a brilliant 8-pointed star of radiant silver chips, representing the eternal rays of state authority. At the very heart of the star sits an intricately detailed depiction of the thistle flower, fashioned from pure gold and vibrant colored enamels, which is surrounded by a deep blue band bearing the ancient, uncompromising motto stitched in bold gold lettering, Nemo me impune lacessit. As Princess Catherine stands before the high altar, enveloped in this magnificent visual grandeur, the presence of these sacred symbols on her person will deliver a profound message to the assembled diplomats, politicians, and civil servants. It will declare that the highest authorities of the realm have officially designated her as the primary visual custodian of the kingdom's unified legacy. The profound strategic brilliance of this entire operation lies in its total compliance with ancient constitutional statutes and modern corporate transparency. By utilizing the strict, unyielding framework of the sovereign prerogative to award the extra lady status, King Charles III, Prince William, and Princess Anne have engineered an administrative masterpiece that leaves Queen Camilla entirely powerless to launch a public defense or claim political victimization. To complain openly about Catherine's elevation would force the office of the Queen Consort to admit its own systemic failure, highlighting the fact that her private secretaries were caught attempting to bypass the standard auditing committees of the Duchy of Cornwall just weeks prior. The defensive wall constructed by the legitimate heirs has held completely firm, ensuring that the material and symbolic wealth of the crown remains an indivisible trust designed solely to support the active bloodline. As the ceremony concludes, and the majestic procession moves out into the streets of Edinburgh, the permanent correction of the royal landscape will be finalized. Sitting in the rear of her official luxury vehicle, watching the international cameras focus entirely on the radiant, flawless presence of the Princess of Wales, Queen Camilla will face the absolute, chilling reality of her calculated journey to the throne. She will remain trapped in a position of public prominence but absolute private powerlessness, forced to perform her ceremonial duties while her office operates under a strict monitoring regime enforced by the Cabinet Office. She successfully conquered the titles and she claimed the crown, but she failed to realize that the true masters of the empire had already locked the vaults, reassigned the historic heirlooms, and secured the green velvet future of the dynasty for Queen Catherine.